Tonight, you'll step inside a medieval tavern where the ale was often safer than the water, where strangers became friends, or enemies, over a single wooden mug, and where one ordinary evening could quietly change a traveler's life forever. Dim the lights, settle into a comfortable place, and allow the gentle crackle of the tavern fireplace to guide you back more than 600 years. Tonight, we'll spend a peaceful evening inside a medieval tavern, discovering the people, food, music, customs, and quiet mysteries hidden behind its heavy oak doors. There's no rush here. Just relax, and let history slowly carry you towards sleep. The first thing you notice isn't what you see, it's what you smell. Warm bread has just been pulled from a stone oven. Sweet roasted onions simmer gently in a heavy iron pot. Wood smoke curls lazily through the rafters, carrying the comforting scent of oak and ash. Somewhere nearby, a splash of ale has soaked into the old wooden floor, a smell that has become as familiar to this place as the fire itself. As your eyes adjust to the flickering candlelight, the tavern slowly comes into focus. Long wooden tables stretch across the room. Benches are worn smooth by thousands of travelers who have rested here over the years. A crackling fireplace glows against the far wall, filling the room with gentle warmth while shadows dance softly across the ceiling beams. For people living in medieval Europe, a tavern was far more than a place to enjoy a drink. It was the heart of the community. News traveled here long before newspapers existed. Farmers discussed harvests. Merchants negotiated prices. Traveling musicians shared songs from distant kingdoms. Pilgrims exchanged stories from sacred shrines, while weary travelers simply searched for a warm meal and a safe place to sleep before continuing their journey. If you wanted to know what was happening in the world beyond your village, the tavern was where you listened. One detail might surprise modern visitors. The drink served most often wasn't water. It was ale. Today that may sound unusual, but in many medieval towns, clean drinking water wasn't always easy to find. Wells and streams could become contaminated, especially in crowded settlements. Brewing ale involved heating water during the process, making it a more dependable choice in many places. Much of the everyday ale, often called small ale, contained very little alcohol, allowing adults and even older children to drink it throughout the day. As the evening grows busier, the door opens again. A muddy farmer steps inside after working in the fields. Moments later, a merchant wrapped in a wool cloak arrives carrying leather bags filled with goods from another town. Soon after, a monk quietly enters, followed by two travelers whose boots are coated with dust from miles of winding roads. On another night, even a knight might stop here, removing his gloves before settling near the fire. Inside these walls, people from every walk of life shared the same warmth, the same tables, and often the very same meal. Something else catches your attention. There isn't a sign with a written name above the entrance. In fact, many medieval taverns didn't have official names at all. Instead, a carved wooden symbol hung outside the building, perhaps a painted lion, a golden crown, a white horse, a bunch of grapes, or a simple tankard carved from oak. These signs weren't simply decorations. Most people in medieval Europe couldn't read, so pictures helped travelers recognize familiar inns from a distance. A merchant might remember staying at the tavern with the red lion, while another searched for the inn marked by a black boar. The signs became landmarks long before street addresses ever existed. As the fire burns brighter, you notice a narrow staircase leading to the upper floor. Don't imagine rows of quiet private bedrooms. Those were rare and expensive. Instead, large shared rooms waited upstairs, where strangers often slept side by side beneath rough wool blankets. A merchant from France might spend the night beside a shepherd from England, while a pilgrim from Italy rested only a few feet away. Privacy was a luxury few expected. The floor beneath your boots feels surprisingly soft. Instead of bare wood or stone, it's covered with dried rushes and fragrant herbs scattered across the ground. Lavender, mint, and sweet-smelling plants helped freshen the air and provided a little comfort underfoot. Of course, medieval life wasn't perfectly clean. Dogs wandered freely through many taverns. Mud was carried in from the streets, and farm animals sometimes wandered close to the doorway. The floor could become messy despite everyone's efforts to keep the room welcoming. Yet compared with the cold roads outside, this still felt like a place of comfort. Hundreds of tiny candle flames flickered gently throughout the room. Their golden light reflects against wooden beams darkened by decades of smoke. Faces glow softly as conversations rise and fall like quiet waves. Nothing feels hurried. Nothing feels loud enough to disturb the peaceful rhythm of the evening. Watching over it all is the tavern keeper. His job involves far more than serving food and ale. He greets unfamiliar faces, settles disagreements before they become fights, protects travelers' belongings, arranges beds for the night, feeds hungry horses, and often knows every important piece of local news before anyone else. In many towns, the tavern keeper becomes one of the most trusted people in the community. And sometimes, history quietly passes through the front door. In the late Middle Ages, famous inns along major trade routes became gathering places for merchants traveling between great cities such as London, Bruges, and Cologne. Around sturdy wooden tables like these, traders discussed wool, spices, cloth, salt, and precious metals. They shared news about dangerous roads, changing markets, and distant fairs where fortunes could be made. Long before modern offices or conference rooms, important business decisions were often made beside a crackling fireplace, with nothing more than a wooden mug of ale resting between trusted hands. As you settle onto the smooth wooden bench, listening to the gentle murmur of voices and the steady crackle of the fire, it's easy to understand why these humble taverns became the beating heart of medieval life. Now imagine that you are no longer simply observing this tavern. For a little while, you are one of its travelers. The day's journey has been long. Your boots are damp from crossing muddy country roads, and your shoulders ache from carrying a heavy pack. The autumn air is cool, and the fatting light has painted the sky with soft shades of gold and gray. In the distance, you spot a warm glow shining through a pair of small windows. It's the village tavern. As you push open the thick oak door, a small brass bell jingles softly above your head. A wave of comforting warmth immediately replaces the evening chill. You pause for just a moment. Allowing your eyes to adjust, the room feels wonderfully alive, yet peaceful. A large fireplace crackles steadily in the corner, sending gentle sparks dancing upward before disappearing into the chimney. The scent of burning oak mixes with the aroma of fresh bread and slow-cooked stew. You quietly remove your wool cloak, brushing away bits of dried mud collected during the day's walk. Nearby, an old shepherd stretches his tired legs beside the fire. Across the room, two merchants lean over a wooden table covered with rolled maps and tiny leather pouches filled with silver coins. They speak in calm, careful voices, occasionally smiling as they reach an agreement. Not far away, a traveling monk slowly warms his hands around a steaming wooden cup. His long journey has taken him through forests, villages, and quiet monasteries. Tonight, he asks for nothing more than a simple meal and a safe place to sleep. Near the doorway, a cheerful serving woman carries several heavy bowls balanced carefully on a wooden tray. She moves through the crowded room with remarkable ease, greeting familiar faces by name and welcoming strangers with a warm smile. The tavern feels less like a business, and more like a home shared by everyone passing through. You find an empty place on a long wooden bench. Almost immediately, a friendly farmer sitting beside you offers a polite nod. There is no need for introductions. In medieval taverns, strangers often became companions for a single evening. The tavern keeper soon arrives carrying a large wooden bowl filled with thick vegetable stew. Carrots, onions, cabbage, barley, and herbs gently steam in the candlelight. Beside it sits a loaf of freshly baked bread, its crust still warm from the oven. It isn't a feast fit for a king, but after walking many miles, it feels absolutely perfect. As you enjoy your meal, the sounds around you become part of the evening's gentle rhythm. Wooden spoons softly tap against bowls. Quiet conversations drift across the room. Someone chuckles after hearing a funny story. A dog sighs contentedly before curling into a tighter ball beneath a nearby bench. Outside, the wind brushes against the tavern walls, but inside, the fire keeps everyone warm. Soon, a traveling musician enters carrying a well-loved lute. Without saying much, he sits near the fireplace and begins to play. The melody is slow and comforting. Some guests quietly hum along. Others simply close their eyes for a moment, enjoying the peaceful music after a long day's journey. For many travelers, evenings like this offered rare moments of rest in an uncertain world. Roads could be dangerous. Storms could arrive without warning. Bridges sometimes collapsed. Bandits occasionally waited along lonely forest paths. But inside a welcoming tavern, those worries seem to fade, if only until sunrise. As the hours pass, the room gradually grows quieter. One by one, travelers finish their meals. Candles burn a little lower. The conversations soften into gentle whispers. The fire continues its steady crackle, casting warm golden light across faces that have grown sleepy after a long day on the road. For just one peaceful evening, people from distant villages, different professions, and completely different lives have gathered beneath the same roof. Tomorrow, each of them will continue on their own journey. But tonight, they simply share the comfort of warmth, food, and quiet company inside a medieval tavern. As the evening settles comfortably around you, the tavern begins to slow into a gentle rhythm. The busiest hour has passed. Most travelers have found a seat. The fire has been fed with another thick log, and the warm glow of candlelight makes the wooden walls seem almost golden. Now there is time to simply enjoy the evening. A serving woman places another steaming bowl onto your table. Tonight's meal is simple, but carefully prepared. The stew has been simmering over the fire for hours, allowing every ingredient to soften and blend together. Inside are onions, carrots, cabbage, barley, and a few herbs gathered from nearby gardens. On fortunate evenings, small pieces of salted pork or beef add extra flavor, though meat is far too valuable to appear in every meal. Fresh bread accompanies nearly everything. The loaf is dark, dense, and hearty, baked from rye or barley flour rather than the soft white wheat bread reserved for the wealthy. You tear away a warm piece and dip it into the rich broth, just as countless travelers have done for generations. Cheese, butter, and pickled vegetables often complete the meal. In autumn, roasted apples may appear beside the fire. During summer, fresh herbs brighten even the simplest dishes. Nothing is wasted. Every ingredient has value. Life in medieval Europe teaches people to appreciate every meal placed before them. Your wooden cup is filled once more, not with water, but with ale. To modern ears, this may sound surprising, yet for many medieval people, ale is simply an ordinary part of daily life. The drink served in taverns is usually much weaker than the beer many people enjoy today. Often called small ale, it contains only a small amount of alcohol and is commonly enjoyed with breakfast, lunch, and supper. For many families, it is simply another everyday drink. Nearby, a merchant raises his cup in a quiet toast to companions who helped him safely cross the countryside. The wooden mugs gently touch together with a soft, satisfying knock. Across the room, laughter rises from another table. A group of travelers has started a friendly game of dice. The rules are simple and the stakes are small. Perhaps a few coins. Perhaps tomorrow's breakfast. Perhaps only the pride of winning. Others gather around a carved wooden board to play an early strategy game, carefully moving polished stones across the smooth surface while discussing the best next move. There is no hurry, no clocks hanging on the wall, no schedules demanding attention. The evening unfolds at its own peaceful pace. Near the fireplace, the traveling musician begins another tune. This time the melody is lighter. His fingers glide gently across the strings of a well-worn lute, while another traveler quietly joins with a small wooden flute. The music fills every corner of the tavern without overpowering the conversations. Children visiting with their parents sway gently to the rhythm. Older guests smile as familiar songs bring back memories of journeys made long ago. Not every traveler arrives carrying goods or coins. Some carry stories. A gray-haired storyteller stands slowly from his bench and begins speaking about distant castles, Mysterious forests, brave knights, clever queens, and dragons said to sleep beneath forgotten mountains. No one knows exactly how much of his tale is true. Perhaps none of it. Perhaps just enough. But in a world without books for most people, stories become treasures passed from one generation to the next. Even news travels this way. Long before newspapers or radios existed, taverns served as living centers of information. A traveler arriving from London might describe busy markets crowded with merchants from across Europe. Another guest speaks of heavy rains washing out roads to the north. Someone else quietly shares rumors that a powerful lord is preparing for war. Some stories prove true. Others grow a little more exciting each time they are told. As the fire continues to burn, strangers listen carefully, learning about places they may never visit themselves. For many people, this small tavern is their window to the wider world. Outside, darkness has now completely settled over the village. The wind brushes softly against the wooden walls. Inside, however, warmth, conversation, and gentle music continue to wrap everyone in quiet comfort. For just a few peaceful hours, the worries of tomorrow seem wonderfully far away. There is only the crackling fire, the comforting meal before you, and the timeless feeling of belonging inside a medieval tavern at the close of another ordinary day. As the evening grows later, the tavern becomes quieter. The cheerful conversations soften into gentle murmurs, and the fire burns lower, sending glowing embers drifting slowly upward. It is at this hour that the tavern begins to reveal some of its more unusual customs. One of the first things that might surprise a modern traveler is what happens when it's finally time for bed. You climb the narrow wooden staircase expecting to find your own private room. Instead, you discover one large chamber filled with simple straw mattresses. There are no locked doors, no separate bedrooms, no quiet hallways. Travelers simply sleep wherever space is available. A merchant from York might lie beside a farmer from the countryside. A monk could spend the night next to a sailor who had arrived only hours earlier from a distant port. To people of the Middle Ages, this felt perfectly ordinary. Privacy, as we know it today, was a rare luxury. Downstairs, the tavern keeper quietly walks from table to table. He checks that every candle is burning safely. He makes certain the fire will last through the cold night. He counts the day's coins before locking them inside a sturdy wooden chest. But his responsibilities go far beyond serving meals. The tavern keeper often protects travelers from thieves, settles disagreements before they become serious, cares for valuable horses in the stable, and sometimes even stores money or important documents for trusted merchants. In many villages, he knows nearly everyone, and almost everyone knows him. Not every evening passes peacefully. Sometimes strangers arrive carrying dangerous secrets. Imagine a weary traveler entering just after sunset. His cloak is dusty. His hood hides much of his face. He speaks little. To everyone else, he seems like an ordinary guest searching for supper and a place to sleep. But unknown to the room, he is a royal messenger. Hidden inside his leather satchel is an important letter from the king. Tomorrow, before sunrise, he will continue his journey toward another castle many miles away. Tonight, however, he sits quietly beside farmers and craftsmen, unnoticed by almost everyone. Stories like these were not uncommon. Medieval taverns welcomed every kind of traveler. Pilgrims heading toward holy shrines, merchants carrying silk and spices, knights returning from distant campaigns, students traveling to universities, messengers delivering royal orders, even wandering physicians searching for the next village needing their skills. For one evening, people whose lives would never normally cross shared the same roof. Sometimes history itself unfolded inside these wooden walls. One remarkable example comes from England during the 14th century. Records tell us that groups of wool merchants regularly gathered at roadside inns before continuing their journeys to important trading towns. Around heavy oak tables, they discussed prices, planned safer travel routes, warned one another about flooded roads and dangerous bandits, and decided where valuable goods should be sold. Without realizing it, these quiet conversations helped shape the economy of medieval England. No grand palace, no royal courtroom. Just merchants talking beside a warm fire. Of course, not every disagreement ended so peacefully. Medieval court records occasionally mention tavern arguments that became surprisingly serious. One famous case describes two travelers who quarreled after one accidentally spilled ale onto the other's expensive wool cloak. What began as a simple accident soon turned into shouting, pushing, and eventually a visit before the local court. Today, the story may seem almost humorous. Yet it reminds us that even ordinary evenings could sometimes become unforgettable. As midnight slowly approaches, the tavern begins preparing for sleep. The serving woman clears away empty bowls. The musician carefully places his lute inside a worn leather case. The last mugs of ale are quietly finished. Outside, the village has fallen completely silent. Only the gentle breeze moves through the trees beyond the stable. Inside, the warmth of the fireplace remains. The candles grow smaller. The conversations fade. One by one, tired travelers climb the old wooden staircase, carrying nothing more than their blankets, their dreams, and hopes for a safe journey tomorrow. For another night, the medieval tavern has done exactly what it was meant to do. It has offered warmth to the cold, food to the hungry, companionship to strangers, and shelter to everyone who passed through its welcoming door. As the evening grows quieter, it's a wonderful time to separate some of the popular myths about medieval taverns from the fascinating reality. Many of the stories we hear today come from movies, novels, and fantasy tales. They are entertaining, of course, but real medieval taverns were often very different from the noisy, dangerous places we imagine. Let's quietly explore a few of the biggest misconceptions. The first myth is that everyone inside a medieval tavern was constantly drunk. It's an easy picture to imagine. Rows of laughing travelers raising overflowing mugs from sunrise until midnight. The reality was much more ordinary. For many people, ale was simply part of everyday life. The drink most commonly served was called small ale, brewed with very little alcohol. It was enjoyed with meals, after long hours of work, and during travel. In many places, it was considered a more dependable choice than untreated water, which could sometimes carry disease. Of course, stronger drinks certainly existed. Special celebrations, festivals, and wealthy guests sometimes enjoyed richer ales, mead, or imported wine. But for most ordinary people, drinking was simply another part of daily routine, not an endless celebration. Another popular myth tells us that every medieval tavern was filled with danger. Movies often show sword fights breaking out every few minutes. Wooden tables are smashed. Strangers challenge one another to duels. Everyone seems ready for a fight. Real life was usually much quieter. Most taverns served as peaceful gathering places where neighbors met after work, travelers rested during long journeys, and families shared simple meals together. Arguments did happen from time to time. After all, wherever people gather, disagreements naturally occur. But constant violence would have been bad for business. A good tavern keeper worked hard to maintain order, knowing that travelers would only return to places where they felt welcome and safe. Another myth suggests that taverns belonged only to men. History tells a very different story. Across medieval England and much of Europe, women played an essential role in tavern life. Many women brewed ale in their own homes before opening small taverns. Others inherited inns from family members and managed every part of the business themselves. They hired workers, welcomed guests, prepared meals, handled money, and earned the trust of their local communities. In many villages, the person greeting weary travelers at the door was just as likely to be a woman as a man. Then there is the familiar belief that medieval food was always unpleasant. People often imagine burnt meat, stale bread, and tasteless soup. Yet many taverns served meals that would still feel comforting today. Fresh loaves of bread came from nearby ovens. Vegetables were harvested from local gardens. Herbs added wonderful flavor to soups and stews. Cheese, butter, onions, cabbage, apples, and roasted root vegetables appeared regularly on the table. When available, salted pork, beef, or freshly caught fish completed the meal. Simple, certainly, but warm, nourishing, and satisfying after a long day on the road. Finally, perhaps the biggest surprise of all. Many people imagine every traveler retiring to a private room before drifting peacefully to sleep. In reality, private rooms were rare and expensive. Most guests slept together in large shared chambers. Rows of straw mattresses covered the floor. Travelers removed their boots, wrapped themselves in thick wool blankets, and rested beside complete strangers. A merchant, a pilgrim, a farmer, and a messenger might all sleep only a few feet apart. To medieval people, this wasn't uncomfortable. It was simply normal. Looking back, we realize that medieval taverns were far more than places to eat and drink. They were homes away from home. Places where strangers became companions, where news traveled faster than written letters, where music, laughter, business, friendship, and quiet moments all shared the same warm fire. And perhaps that is why these humble buildings continue to capture our imagination even centuries later. Now, the evening has almost come to an end. The fire burns lower with each passing minute. Its bright flames have settled into a bed of glowing orange embers that quietly pulse beneath the blackened logs. The room grows softer. Conversations that once filled the tavern have faded into gentle whispers. The merchants have rolled up their maps. The farmers have finished their suppers. The travelers speak only a few final words before sleep. Near the fireplace, the musician carefully places his well-loved lute into its leather case. The last melody of the evening has come to a peaceful end. Outside, a light rain begins to fall. Tiny drops tap softly against the wooden shutters. The sound blends beautifully with the steady crackle of burning oak. Somewhere beyond the stable, a horse shifts its weight before settling comfortably into fresh straw. Everything feels wonderfully still. Upstairs, tired travelers are already asleep beneath thick wool blankets. Some dream of returning home. Others dream of distant cities they have yet to visit. A few remain awake just a little longer, quietly watching the dancing fire as tomorrow's journey slowly fills their thoughts. The tavern keeper walks calmly through the room one final time. He smiles gently to himself. One candle is carefully extinguished, then another, and another. With each small flame that disappears, the tavern becomes darker, quieter, and even more peaceful. Soon, only the warm glow of the fireplace remains. The shadows stretch gently across the old wooden beams overhead. Outside, the village road is empty. No wagons pass, no footsteps echo through the night, only the soft rain, the fatting fire, and the comforting silence of another medieval evening. For just one peaceful night, you have become another quiet traveler resting safely inside this welcoming tavern. The long journey is over. There is nowhere else you need to be, nothing left to do, only warmth, comfort, and restful sleep. Thank you for joining tonight's peaceful journey inside a medieval tavern. Together, we've stepped through its heavy wooden doors, shared a warm meal beside the fire, listened to the stories of travelers, uncovered the truths behind old legends, and experienced the quiet comfort that welcomed countless people many centuries ago. As the last embers slowly fade and the village settles into silence, may these gentle